Hello everybody and welcome back to another Kings of War battle report. I'm Visibly Riley and today we have Ogres versus Elves. This battle was fought at 2250 points and the scenario was Occupy. So first we see my opponent's elf list, again no allies, so he has a horde of Kindred Archers with the Heart-Seeking Chant, followed by a horde of Therenian Sea Guard with nothing, 2 regiments of Forest Shamblers, a regiment of Stormwind Cavalry with the Wine of Elvenkind, a horde of Draken Riders with the Healing Brew, 2 ASBs, one of whom has the Diadem of Dragonkind, one has the Lute of Insatiable Darkness, then we have 2 Noble War Chariots, a Dragon Kindred Lord, and lastly a Tree Herder with the Blade of Slashing. I think that this, it's an elf list, so it's got its horde of Kindred, it's got its horde of Archers with a Heart-Seeking Chant, it's got its horde of Draken Riders, it's got a few ASBs, and a Lord on a Dragon. Anything else is pretty much just gravy. You can put anything that's not that weird War Machine hero that gives them Inspire somewhere on the table. Anything else, and they're great. Great army. Moving forward, here is the Ogre list, again, that I've played for the past few weeks, but let us walk through it real quick. First off, we have a horde of Siegebreakers with the Potion of the Caterpillar. Then we have a horde of Hunters with the Brew of Strength, 2 hordes of Boomers, 2 troops of Red Goblin Scouts, 2 regiments of Chariots, a Warlord on a Chariot with the Banner of the Griffin, 2 ASBs, one of whom has the Blade of Slashing, the other has the Diadem of Dragonkind, a Warlock with the Aura of Heroism and Inspiring Talisman, 2 Boomer Sergeants, and the Hell on Wheels formation. I think my previous videos tell you pretty much everything I think about this list. I think it's pretty solid. I like it. So moving forward, on to the battle. So first we see, kind of a shot of the table. So we have 2 hills that you can see. We have one white one off to the right and one sort of gray and brown one to the left there. We have 3 houses, which are height 4 impassable. We have 2 that are in frame, one on the left, one in the center, and then one that's out of the frame on the right. Then we have those little rock outcroppings. Those are all forests, so they're height 6 forests for the purposes of this game, as the terrain was a little light today. As for Occupy, the way it works is that you first place an objective in the dead center of the table. Then each player, starting with the person who won sides, who is me, places an objective within 6 inches of that center line. So I place the one that's on the white hill on the right, my opponent placed the one on the left between the 2 houses. Now, lastly, we are going to place a primary objective. You place it on your opponent's side of the table. It has to be more than 6 inches from a table edge and more than 9 inches from the center. So in that 15-inch range, I guess the 7 to 15, because it has to be wholly within each of those. I, of course, place mine in the top right, and my opponent places his in the bottom left. So we have a pretty even field right here, pretty simple. My idea is that I want to dominate the right side of the table. I think I can take the center objective, the one in the forest, with maybe my Boomers or with my Pathfinder, and then take the hill and then my primary objective. If I do that, my opponent can only take his primary objective and 1 secondary objective, and thus I'll win. So that's the battle plan. Here we see the end of deployment. Starting with the Ogre side from left to right, I have 1 regiment of Chariots, followed by the Ogre Warlord. Then we've got the 2nd regiment of Chariots. Then to the right, 2 Boomer Sergeants who are in front of the ASB with the Diadem of Dragonkind. Then I have to the right of that the Siegebreakers, then the Hunters, then the 2 troops of Red Goblin Scouts. Behind them is the ASB with the Blade of Slashing. And then finally to the right, we've got the 2 hordes of Boomers, and in between them, the Warlock. The idea for the deployment here, again, is that I'm trying to rush the right and use my Chariots as sort of a diversion. Obviously, I want them to kill as much as they can. Dropping maybe my opponent's Chariots or his Cav would be great. Getting rid of his speed and hurting his range, because he's stacked that left flank a lot. So yeah, I'm just trying to run a bit of a diversion while I take the center and the right. But my opponent has a lot of mobility, so that might prove difficult. So starting with my opponent's deployment, we've got from left to right his Dragon his Dragon Kindred Lord. Then to the right of that, the 2 Stegadon models. Those are his nobles on War Chariots for now. Behind them is the horde of Draken Riders. Then to the right of that, we have his horde of Archers, To the right of that, the Cav, then the first ASB, the one with the Diadem of Dragonkind, is right behind that house. Then we have his Seaguard, and behind them is the second ASB. I'm just not exactly sure where it is. And then over on the right, we've got his Tree Herder and the 2 units of Forest Shamblers. My opponent decides to not Vanguard at all, and I win the roll-off for Ogre turn 1. So turn 1, Ogres do what Ogres do, and I advance as far as I can. I mean, this advance was okay. I was a little out of it at the start of this game, so I realized I made a small mistake with my Goblin Cav, and I want to redeploy at least one of them to the left, just to keep them from being able to swing, as with that many flyers and how fast elves are, it's just so easy for him to just swing back towards the center, and considering he outranges me by a lot, he can just back away until that point, because this is a scenario where, you know, it's just what happens at the end of the game. It doesn't matter what happens during it. So yeah, I decide to go hard on the right flank. There's only the Shamblers over there. They can't charge me right now, at least not natively. He could, I think he can get a Surge off, maybe? I think that thing's Surge 8. But yeah, I'm a little over 12 inches away from him. So run forward there, and everything else moves forward. You can see that gold die, I cast Aura of Heroism onto my ASB with the Blade of Slashing to give the melee units in the center, which are the Siegebreakers and the Hunters, a bit more nerve, because I think they're going to absorb some shooting this turn. So, moving forward with my opponent's turn 1, the Elves kind of move up. I mean, their Speed Core moves up, the 2 Nobles on Chariots and the Dragon Kindred Lord move forward, while his Draken Riders stay behind the hill as their height 3, so they can see over it anyway. Everything else just stays back. I mean, he knows he has me out. He has me outranged. He's faster than I am. He has longer range than I do. He has only 1 fewer units than I do. So there's no reason to move forward, not in a mission where it's just about what happens at the end. So, yeah. With his shooting, he fires at my dogs that have moved, redeployed back to the left, does 3 wounds to them and wavers them, and does 8 wounds to my chariot regiment that's in front of his battle line, and wavers them as well. So yeah, and here's the token 1 wound that the Seaguard did to my hunters while they were sitting in the woods. So that does not end in a waiver. It's not. He doesn't go 3 for 3. But yeah, at the end of the turn here, you can see those wounds there. Only doing 8 wounds to the chariot horde. That's pretty bad. I mean, he had his archer horde. Granted, they were hitting on 5s, but he had an archer horde. He had the dragon's breath attack, and then he had the 2 nobles with chariots. I mean, I think that's around 11-ish wounds on average. So only getting 8 is pretty bad luck. But he at least makes up for it by getting that waiver, even though they were a 16, so he needed an 8. So moving forward to turn 2. Turn 2, Ogres get into it. On the left-hand side, you can see that my Warlord on Chariot and the Chariot Regiment that's not wavered go into the Noble Chariot and the Lord on Dragon, respectively. My idea here is that I'll probably be able to kill the Noble Chariot. I mean, I hope I will. I probably won't do enough to get rid of the Dragon, as I think I need to get 7 damage on him before I can even get a break with boxcars, because he's a 17-19. So yeah, that's really just to, you know, knock down his flying and make it so he's not doing his breath attack anymore. So yeah, over there, my chariots that got wavered just back up to get out of the way. My dogs spin around to show their butt to the enemy, just blocking some line of sight. The Boomer Sergeants and the ASB with the Diadem of Dragonkind move to take the center behind the house to just change flanks to whatever side they need to when I need it, and to give Inspiring to the chariot horde, or chariot regiment that I left down near my deployment zone. In the center, I move forward with the Siegebreakers and Hunters, putting them off center a little bit. The Hunters move a little bit more forward, because I don't want my Siegebreakers to get charged by his horde of Seaguard. I'd prefer them to charge the Hunters, as he's got 25 attacks, and I want the Ensnare more than I want the Death 6. So Yep, I moved them forward. Also, they're just not as good as, I mean, I don't need them as much as the siege breakers on that left flank with all that armor. On the right, my boomers move forward to take some shots onto one of those regiments of shamblers, while the dogs move forward to block the other ones from being able to charge them, and my heroes just meander in the back to give inspiring and a target to put aura heroism onto if I need it. Yep, moving forward. Yep, showing off the charge here on the dragon and the cav, or the chariot. Over here, I shoot into his shamblers that were not in any terrain and blow them away pretty easily, actually. So that's great. First blood goes to me. And over here, you can see the first combat. My warlord on chariot does 4 wounds, which is pretty good with only these 7 attacks, 3s and 2s. So 4 wounds, I'll take it. Doesn't get a waiver, but should be fine. Here, yeah, my chariot regiment blows right through that noble on chariot. Not unexpected, but I still needed, some okay dice to go there. So yeah, I blow right through them, and I decide to advance a little bit. If we walk back, I advance a little bit with my chariots here until they're within, or until they stop 1 away from his dragon, because he's got his Draken Riders there, and without this overrun, I actually have a flank charge into my warlord that's pretty easy, and he has just enough room to land, and I didn't want to get into that whole corner to corner debate. I'd really like it if I don't know if they have, but I don't think Mantic has just said how much space you need to have on a side. I mean, I know it says you need to have enough, quote unquote, but that's not a great rule. I prefer to just say you need a centimeter, you need something, right? Just name a number, call it good. Or don't have a corner to corner clause. Anyway, here is the end of Ogre turn 2, and things are looking okay, or so I think. And here's the start of Elf turn 2. So yeah, I knew that I'd given the flank to his Noble War Chariot with my wounded regiment of chariots, but I'm not sure that they can actually kill me, and if they do, it opens up a lot of shooting onto him with my boomer sergeants there. So I'm not against that idea. What I didn't see, if we walk a picture back, yeah, I don't think his cav, in my head, I'm like, oh yeah, with my overrun, his cav can't see my chariots, right? But I'm height 3, so yep, oops, all berries for me. So yeah, his chariots, or his cav charge right into the flank of my chariots, and the Draken Riders go in the front, and that's just a big mistake. So it happens though. His Dragon Rider counter charges into my warlord on the left there. Oh, and it looks like the dragons have been left behind. They actually just won't fit very well there or at all with that hill due to their model. So that proxy base that's in front of my chariot horde, or regiment, I'm going to say horde, that chariot regiment is actually the Draken Riders. In the center of the field, you can see he sends the Sea Guard into the front of my hunters. That is what I expected. And again, his treekin, or his tree herder, can charge the flank of the hunters, and I could have sworn he couldn't do that. But when we get out the laser, it's easy. I mean, he's got a good, probably couple millimeters, maybe a full centimeter of line of sight onto me, and yeah. So that's really bad. Just what a bad turn 2. 2 flank charges. That's exactly what you want to see. Go me. And finally, on the right there, he sends his shamblers, his remaining shamblers, into my dogs to get rid of them, and that's expected. His other units, the guy with the loot, moves back to support the Sea Guard in their charge, or maybe the Tree Herder, although I think it already has Crush 3, so probably not that. And the Diadem and Dragonkind guy decides to take some pot shots onto my Siege Breakers, hoping to, get a couple wounds through their big shield. Otherwise, everything sits still, because they are elves after all. And yeah, just showing off this fight, it's just so bad. I mean, I could have sworn that I checked this, but apparently I didn't. Or didn't check it well enough. This one is just an honest mistake by me. I mean, forgetting about the height 3. Ugh, messy. And over here, yep, getting that counter charge. And finally that one. So with his shooting, because my dogs are height 2, he can't see with his archers over them to shoot into my boomer sergeants, so he just lays it into the dogs and does 10 additional wounds, so that's not great for them. With his Diadem and Dragon Guide, he does 1 wound to my Siege Breaker, so looking for that lucky box card. And yeah, when we get to nerve, he easily kills off these dogs. He actually rolls really high, which is completely unnecessary, but yep, blows right through the dogs. And blows right through the dogs, but doesn't get the boxcars on the Siege Breakers, so that does nothing. Here, the Shamblers do 3 wounds to my other regiment of, or other troop of dogs, but doesn't manage to kill them off, although I actually don't even believe he wavers me here. So bad dice there. And yeah, so he does a few wounds to my chariots, not too many. I think he only did 2 wounds to me. But I'm only a 14-16, and my opponent double ones it. So, yeah, not the best luck. Granted, it wasn't, it's not like he needed a 3 to kill me, but still, double ones are double ones. And yeah, these guys just destroy that regiment of chariots. I mean, just come on, get your head in the game, Riley. Don't get flank charged. But thankfully for me, as you can see at the end of turn shot, the Dragon Lord only does 5 wounds to my Warlord down there and does not waver him. So stroke of luck there on the left, and I'm gonna need it. Oh yes, and the Tree Herder. Apparently, I lost a picture there. The Tree Herder and the Sea Guard, they destroy that unit of hunters. Maybe I talked about that. Anyway, moving on to turn 3. Turn 3, my Ogres on the left there. Again, my Warlord on Chariot goes back into his Dragon Kindred. I have to make sure that he is grounded. I can't afford to have him flying over to the right, especially with how poorly the left is going and how quickly. So I do that. My Chariots that were double one have a charge into his Drakens. I could have charged into the Noble on Chariot, and maybe I should have done that, but I was really concerned with locking down his speed this turn, as I had getting flank charged. I mean, I believe actually with the Tree Herder, with that charge, I didn't see it, or I thought I had actually planned that one out at least. It wasn't the big mistake that the Chariots on the left were. But he doesn't even roll the Tree Herder. The Sea Guard do like 15 wounds to me, or some crazy amount. So didn't even need to do that. So yeah, dice are dice. So yeah, I'm just deciding to lock down his flyers on the left there. I move my Boomer Sergeants and the ASB with the Diadem forward to just shoot into his Cav, hoping to drop them early. They don't have any wounds on them, but they're only at 14-16, and they are currently not inspired. So it seems like an opportune moment to get rid of the last of his speed. And on the right there, I send my Siege Breakers into the Horde of Sea Guard. I actually could have charged his ASB with the Diadem. I fit just perfectly through the gap between the house and the Sea Guard because they fell back a full 3. But I decided at the end of the day that I need to make sure that those Sea Guard are dealt with instead of messing around with my Boomers. And I go for this instead of moving on the Archers with the Siege Breakers. So, yep, do that. I move my ASB with the Blade of Slashing forward to give Inspiring to the Siege Breakers. I can't afford to have them, or have my opponent get even a lucky waiver here would be disastrous. So, well, I guess I don't get a reroll on the waiver, but a lucky kill here would be a disaster. So I have to move him over there. My Boomers take aim, ready to shoot down that Tree Herder. I mean, they probably won't. It's Step 6 with an 18-20 nerve, so that's unlikely. But I need to get some damage on it. And my dogs countercharge back into the Shamblers that charge them. The Warlock is sitting in the back, and that's because I'm just perfectly within, or maybe I roll it forward a little bit. Anyway, I stake it back there so I can get Inspiring on the Boomers in the back, but otherwise, nothing. So showing off that charge, and this one, and this one, and of course, that one. So with my shooting, I actually do 5 wounds to the Tree Herder, so that's pretty good. 36 shots, I get 18 hits. I mean, it's a little below, I guess, because I wound on a 5, but still, I'll take it. Getting 5 better than 0. And yeah, I don't get the lucky waiver there, eating boxcars. But here I do a ton of wounds to the Cav. I do 10 wounds with my I've got 16 Pierce 1 breath attacks, so that's 8 hits, 8 hits, 4 wounds, and then I've got the other guy who's 5 hits, 2 wounds, so I do well above average, just ridiculously well. And get 10 wounds on them, and boop, they're gone, so stroke of luck my way. I mean, better lucky than skilled, I guess. In the combats, not a whole lot happens. My chariots just whiff on that Draken Rider horde. I think I do 3 wounds to them total. Do not get the waiver. While the Warlord continues doing actually pretty well. I think he puts a further 4 wounds onto the Dragon Lord, so he's sitting on an 8, needing, what is that? Got a 9, it's a 10 to kill and an 8 to waiver, and I actually I believe I get the kill on the first roll here, but with the reroll, it turns into nothing, so unfortunate. And here is the end of turn 3 for the Ogres. So starting turn 3 for the Elves, on the left there, again, his Dragon Kindred Lord continues his campaign against my Warlord on Chariot. The Draken Riders countercharge into my wounded Chariot Regiment. Then the Archers sit still, because why would they move? The Noble on Chariot aims to get some shots off. The ASB with the Diadem of Dragonkind moves forward to mess around with those boomers as well. And the Sea Guard countercharge into my Siege Breakers. Oh, I forgot to talk about that combat. I actually do pretty well. I think I do 10-ish wounds, but I don't get the what is that, like a 10 to waiver them. So yeah, I do pretty well, but not well enough to get a waiver. So they get a countercharge there. And on the right, his Tree Herder gets a charge into my back boomers, so I can't support them. But I'm not really worried about that. Because he only has 7 attacks. He hits me at, 7 attacks on 3s and 2s with 1 reroll to hit. That's not too many wounds. It's like, 4 or 5. So I'm not super worried about that. The dog in the dog fight versus the Shamblers, yeah, I don't even hit him. So all 7 attacks whiff, and he gets a countercharge into me unfettered. So, I did get some the Aura of Heroism onto the back unit of boomers. Again, I probably should have put it on the front unit now that I think about it, because I really like the idea of splitting incentives for my opponent. So if I cast it on the front unit and he charges the back unit, I can't countercharge him with 2 hordes of boomers, right? But I can't have I don't lose my rally 2, right? If I put it on the back unit, it's just the obvious choice. So it's really about, giving your opponent the choices that you want them to make, and in this case, I didn't actually want him to do this. I wanted him to charge the front one, so I should have put it there to add an incentive for him to make a mistake, but I didn't. With his shooting, he does 9 total wounds to the Boomer Sergeants, 6 to the one in the front, and 3 to the one in the back, but fails to waiver either of them, so yeah, that's another stroke of luck for me. Over here, he does a further 5 wounds to my Warlord on Chariot, so I've done 8, he's done 10, right on those averages. And but he does not get a break here. In fact, he doesn't even get a waiver. So needing that 6 and failing it. Yeah, but the Draken Horde, oh man, they mess my Chariot Regiment up. Granted, they already had 10 wounds on him, so he didn't really need to, but yeah, he destroys that unit. Just poof, gone. Over here, the Sea Guard continue actually doing fairly well in combat. He's hitting me on 4s with 25 attacks. He's got elite, so what is that? He gets around 13-ish hits, and then he's wounding me on a 5+, so he should, on average, get around 4 or 5 wounds. He does 6 to me, which is excellent, but thankfully doesn't get the waiver. So I'm ready to go for next turn. Unfortunately, the dogs are not as lucky, and the Shamblers finally get him, blowing right through him. But, oop, this picture got turned. This Tree Herder does about what I thought he would do on the average here. He does 4 wounds to the boomers and doesn't get a waiver, so, that's good for me. I've got that counter charge. And that is the end of turn 3. So as you can see, we're starting to consolidate about which tokens we're trying to take. Obviously, that Noble Chariot is setting up to either take the bottom token or take the center token. I guess if my Boomer Sergeants destroy everything on the left, he can take the left token too, but yeah. And moving on to turn 4. So turn 4 Ogres. My Warlord again charges into the Dragon, who has 8 wounds on him now, so I actually am getting into that territory where I could kill him. My Boomer Sergeant with 6 wounds on him charges into the Draken Horde. Again, I'm just looking to ground them. It's important right now because if I blow through that dragon with my Warlord on Chariot, I need to make sure that he's not going to get charged by dragons and just removed. I want him to have to actually dedicate shooting into this guy if he wants to remove him, because otherwise he just gets an easy Draken Rider charge and then shoots another one of my boomers and kills it. So running that MSU style right now. My other Boomer Sergeant charges into his Kindred Archers, speaking of shooting, just trying to shut down their shots, while the ASB just moves to the center objective, shooting at his Noble on Chariot. Yeah, I mean, he couldn't reach either of the combats. He was a little too far behind, so instead he just readies his gun, shooting down that Noble. My ASB with the Blade of Slashing goes into his ASB with the Diadem of Dragonkind. The idea here is that it's a long shot to bust through him because, I mean, only got 3 attacks. But he's only a 10-12, so if I bust through this, I could get a lucky overrun into his archers, and that would be bad news for my opponent, because a further 9 attacks to that Boomer Sergeant's 4, and that gets us into that territory where, you can get the rolls to go your way, get a waiver. In the center, my Siege Breakers go back into his Sea Guard, hoping to get enough wounds to actually get them off the table. My Boomers that have yet to charge into his Shamblers, hoping to get rid of them this turn so they can turn around and mess around with that Tree Herder. The other Boomers countercharge the aforementioned Tree Herder, while my Warlock, I wanted to move him in a way, like I could have flank charged his Tree Herder, but I needed to get Inspire back onto the Siege Breakers because I want the ASB with the Blade of Slashing to overrun away from them. So I position him, he has to run to get into position to support those Siege Breakers along with the Boomers still. Just because my opponent just still has a bit too much shooting and combat potential. Yep, showing off these charges. Bam, bam. Yeah, always have to turn Ogres around. They don't play well with others. And of course this one. And that one. And that one. Oh, and these ones. So, in combat, I actually hit with all 3 and get 3 out of 3 wounds as well onto this guy. So with my Brutal, I need a 6 to waver, and I fail it. Roll a 5. So, at least he can't shoot his diadem. Over here, yeah, I do 5 wounds to this guy. That is great. I do need a 7 to waver, and I actually get the 9 to kill him, and I'm like, damn it. Sure, I want to kill him, but I'd prefer just a waver right now, right? Like, I have plenty of time to get the kill. But I get the 9, and then I rolled again into a 6, so roll 1 under, and he's ready to rock. Over here, yeah, I also don't do very well here. I only do 3 wounds to these Shamblers, but they are toughness 5, defense 5, and I only have crushing 1, with no ability to Bane Chant, let's say. So, yeah, I mean, that's okay. The Siege Breakers do what Siege Breakers do, and finally blow right through that horde of Sea Guard and turn to face the threat of the Elves and Draken Riders on the left, because I think my Boomers should have the right flank. Speaking of the Draken Riders, my Warlord on Chariot does 3 wounds to his Elven Dragon, putting him on 11 wounds, right? So with my Brutal that puts him on a 12, I need a 7 twice to kill him. I get the 7 on the first roll, and then I roll a 4. So he's not even wavered again. I mean, man, sometimes you just need 7s and you don't get them. But I'm like, it's again, you get the hits and you get the wounds, but it doesn't matter until you roll break. Here I get, I think 1 wound, because the horde of the Draken Rider horde had healed 1 due to its healing brew in the previous turn. I put a further wound onto it, and then I roll out, and we're like, oh, need boxcars, forgetting about Brutal. So yeah, I do 3 wounds to it, I get 1 for Brutal, and I roll an 11, so he is wavered. Bit of luck there. And you can see it in the back there. The Archer Horde, I think, took 2 or 3 wounds from the Boomer Sergeant, so he does pretty well. But he just needed to turn off their bows. He does that and doesn't get the waiver. So things are looking interesting right now in the battle. I have the right flank, but it's not great due to fail on the tree herder and the fail on the shamblers. So this was a pivotal turn, and my dice just weren't with it in terms of the break test. I needed them all to fall in line, and they didn't. So it'll be an interesting turn 4 for the elves. Turn 4 for the elves, so his tree herder again goes into my horde of boomers. The shamblers countercharge the other horde of boomers. And then off on the left, the archers countercharge my boomer sergeant. The dragon riders countercharge the other boomer sergeant. And, oh no, they don't. They are wavered, sorry. The noble and chariot turns to face the other boomer sergeant, and he took 2 wounds from my diadem. Dragonkind in the previous turn, which I forgot to mention. And lastly, the Dragon Lord goes into my Warlord, so that's probably good night for him. I mean, 10 attacks on 3s with a lead and 2s to wound. I already have 10 wounds on me, and I'm only a 16-18. Not looking great. In the middle, an interesting move. My opponent decides to put his ASB with the Diadem of Dragonkind into the flank of the Siege Breakers, and at the time I'm like, wow, I don't know how I missed that. Like, such an easy thing that I could have just adjusted a little bit more so he couldn't get the 6-inch over there, but, you know, happens. Showing up the charge. And this one. And that one. And the final charge. So with shooting, yeah, he only does 1 wound to this guy, but he already had 6 on him and blows right through him. I guess he was I think a 13-15 due to my rally 2 there. So he needed a pretty decent roll, 8+ twice, but he gets it, kills them all. Unfortunately, the Dragon Lord wins the combat and kills off my Warlord on Chariot, so things are looking a bit grim on the left. And the Archer Horde kills off my Boomer Sergeant with 3 wounds on him. Now it wasn't particularly lucky or unlucky, I think, personally, just because he rolled very well with his hits and wounds, but Elven Archers, for some fucking reason, have a 5+ melee. It's just so ridiculous. But yeah, he has a 5+ melee, but he did, he cast Banechant on them from his other ASB, I believe, to get +1 crushing. So, and it was just a Boomer Sergeant that was unsupported, so I'm not really surprised that he took it. As for the shooting, the Diadem of Dragonkind does 3 wounds, it looks like, to my Siege Breakers, because he got to the flank of them. That's very unfortunate. And in combat, yeah, on the right combat, the Shamblers don't do anything. I mean, they do 3 wounds to me, but they don't get a waver or break. But unfortunately for me, on the right, he does 3 wounds with his herder onto my other boomers and gets the waver. So yeah, again, needing an 8, and he just gets it this turn. And so the turn 4 I needed, my opponent gets. And that could spell doom for the Ogres. But turn 5, we're still in it, we're still fighting. I move my ASB with the Blade of Slashing, charges into the Archer Horde. Again, I need to make sure that they can't shoot. That is pivotal. My ASB with the Diadem of Dragonkind lines up some shots onto his dragon. I really need that to be gone. It's too important. So I know I can get charged. I actually messed around with this for a while, but there's no way I can get the line of sight of the dragon, have the Noble Chariot not have a flank, and hide from the Dragon Horde. Because, yeah, I only have the, I should have, I think I just over-adjusted when I moved the ASB last turn over to the token when I wanted to shoot at the Noble and Chariot. But, I mean, I was kind of banking that my Warlord would be able to solve the dragon this turn, or at least waver him, and I didn't get it, so, you know, happens. On the right, my Siege Breakers turn to face the Deadly Diadem of Dragonkind, and otherwise they just sit still. I back up a little bit, because I'm trying to back onto the token for turn 6. And then on the far right, I send my Boomers back into the Shamblers, hoping to get rid of them, and my Warlock takes aim at his wounded Tree Herder, hoping to get the kill with a bit of Lightning Bolt. And yeah, I do 2 wounds with my Lightning Bolt, get a very lucky waver. So my opponent gets a lucky waver, I get a lucky waver right back, and that's just this game. It's pretty exciting. With my shooting, I do, what is that, 2 wounds? I do 2 wounds to the dragon, again looking for a 6 to kill, and I roll a 5. So, I mean, at least I wavered it this time, so whoopee me. but I really, really, really needed that 6 this turn. So very unfortunate, but happens. And a blurry shot of nothing. So my boomers roll right through the shamblers. So because they don't really have to fight or they shouldn't have to fight the tree herder next turn, I just turn them back towards the fight, or towards the battle. And I realize now that there's a bit of a mistake here, which is I should have turned fully out of the terrain, because where I was fighting the shamblers, I actually wasn't in it. So if I turned completely around, I wouldn't have been in it, and I could have marched turn 6, which is probably what I need to do due to the scenario. But I turn like that. With my ASB, I do 2 wounds to the archer horde, so I turn off their shooting, but I don't get a waiver. And that is the end of turn 5 for ogres. Turn 5 for elves. The Draken Horde easily charges into my Diadem of Dragonkind on the hill. I mean, I guess we're looking for double ones there. The Deadly Archers charge into my ASB, or countercharge into my ASB. This was when, I'm sure everyone here has noticed, but my Siege Breakers, I remembered that the Diadem couldn't shoot me. He was in fact disrupted. So I take the wounds off. I also, it looks like I took 1 too many wounds, but I put it back on before this turn is out. And over on the right, yeah, he just moves his Noble Chariot up. He's looking to get some shots onto my Siege Breakers, because if he kills them, it's very difficult for me to take the center, as I need to take the center and the right, like and my boomers that are over there, because I over adjusted with the top boomer horde, the one with 3 wounds on him. Because I over adjusted there into the terrain, I can't run onto any of the objectives. So I'm kind of up shit creek. But yep. With the elf combat, yeah, I just make him double one it. It's just not worth rolling. And here he does 4 wounds to my ASB. Thankfully, it doesn't look like he got a waiver there, so that's lucky. And yeah, with his shooting, you can see the wounds are back onto the Siege Breakers. He did 2 wounds with his Diadem of Dragonkind and Noble on War Chariot combined, but otherwise nothing else. And turn 6. So turn 6, I've got to make something happen. I decide to take my Warlock and drop him into the bottom right to take that token. I drop my Boomers back to the primary objective, ready to shoot at the Tree Herder. The other Boomers can't get anywhere, so I can't get to that center objective. I can't finagle them over to the right objective and then run with the other Boomers. So instead, they just move forward a little bit and take aim at the Tree Herder to make sure that it's gone. My ASB with the Blade of Slashing charges back into the Archer Horde, again to turn off their shooting. I need to make sure that the Siege Breakers, who have now backed up even more, they're the only unit that is within 3 inches of that center objective, and they're just barely within 3. And they have 9 wounds on them already. So he only needs an 8 to kill them total, wounds plus his roll. So I need to make sure that I limit the amount of shots he gets. I could have limited a bit more by having my Boomers shoot down his ASB, who already has 3 wounds on him, but I decide in the end that the other unit, again, my Boomers that have 7 wounds on them already are the only ones that are around the primary objective. So yeah, this is what I end up having to do. And showing up the combat. With my shooting, I do manage to clear the Tree Herder, thankfully. Actually, I really needed that second unit, because this first unit rolls like poo-poo. And over here, I do 1 or 2 wounds to the archers, not enough to really ring their bell much, and I don't get the waiver. And that's the end of the turn. So turn 6, bottom up for the elves. He moves his Warlord on Chariot to contest the center objective. He's not contesting it very well because I'm in strength 3, he's only unit strength 1, but if he manages to kill the Siege Breakers, he will have that objective. He takes his primary objective with his Dragon Kindred Lord again. It's got 13 wounds on it. I had so many break checks, but I didn't manage to get it. So yeah, he then flies his Draken Horde onto the other secondary objective and countercharges me with the archers. Yep, showing up the 1 charge. Yeah, with his shooting, he does just enough to get the Siege Breakers off. It wasn't too many wounds, if I remember correctly. It might have actually been 2. But he gets a decent break check. No, he did more than... Let's roll back. Yeah, actually, I think it was 2 wounds, because I've got 9 there, and I think he needed a 6 to break me, and he gets it. So, you know, it's not those high rolls. It's just, you know, hitting him when you need him. And here is the end of turn 6 shot. My opponent rolls the die, and there's no turn 7, so the Ogres lose this game 3-5, I believe, right? Because he's got 2 for his primary. No, it is 3-4. So he's got 2 for his primary, then he has the center objective now because my siege breakers are dead, and then he has his left objective held by both the Draken Riders and the Archer Horde. While I have my primary objective and that bottom blue token on the right with my Warlock. And, you know, as the closing note, I just think that the problem here, I mean, the problem here is I got flanked when I didn't need to be. I mean, that was just poor play by me. But yeah, it just goes to show you what happens when you don't get those break checks near the end of the game, right? And that center to end, right? That turn 4, turn 5 territory. When you don't get those break checks, it just gives your opponent too many tools to grab objectives at the end of the game. As you can see, like if he didn't have his Dragon Kindred, this is a tie. That's the best he can do unless there's a turn 7, because he just doesn't have the unit strength to hold all these objectives, and that's a tie only if he kills the siege breaker. So yeah, it's just, you know, sometimes you get your unit with 13 wounds stays on the board while your opponent's unit with 13 wounds gets killed, and that's just those razor thin lines that really show off a good game. I hope everyone enjoyed it. I know I did, and I'll see you next time. Bye.